I want to know how you're feeling. How you doing? You recall there
George,
was some.
I'm feeling very well. I still undergoing treatment, which I probably will for a long time. But on the day I go to LA every Wednesday for my treatment from Dr. Sunshang, and when they give me the chemo, it makes me sick for a few days, but they don't give it to me every week. So frankly, I'm doing quite well. I'm able to 4 or 5 days a week. I exercise quite hard, walk outside. I have to use my cane, but I still can fairly mobile. So I'm doing okay.
It must.
George, you always remember, I've told you this before, you play the cards you're dealt.
I remember there was in particular, a media person who predicted dire consequences for you. It must be nice to kind of stick them in the eye and still be around.
That was several years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he interviewed me, New York Times.
I know during 2020 that a lot of people were coming to see you for political advice. All the presidential candidates made a stop, bent your ear. Do you still have a role like that with the Democratic Party? Are you someone whose advice they seek out?
Well, I have the good fortune of being able to talk to my friends in Washington. I'm in touch with the Biden folks quite often, Steve Ricchetti or Ron Klain. I haven't talked to the president for, it's probably been at least 6 weeks, but I stay in touch with them. And you say, do they seek my advice? Well, sometimes I give them my advice that they're not seeking.
I was wondering about Joe Biden has been a friend of yours for a long time. You were majority leader when he was in the Senate, and he sort of took your guidance. I mean, he followed your lead on a lot of things. I wonder if you've thought about whether he is ready to hear about the topic we're going to discuss today, the one we've talked about for so long, or does he have too much else on his plate?
Joe Biden is just really a fine guy, just he's somebody that you're comfortable with. He has had some tough times in his life. When he was a boy, he stammered, he couldn't talk. And as a teenager, he had a lot of people who made fun of him, and he became known as shoe leather. He got in so many fights that he was as tough as shoe leather. So Joe Biden, in addition to losing his wife and daughter after being elected to the Senate, had his boy had brain cancer and died. So he's been through a great deal. And he's a person I admire. And he is doing a good job as president. He's going big on most everything he does, which we haven't had that in a long time.
Do you anticipate him getting a briefing on the UFO UAP topic at some point, or is it too early in his presidency?
I think it's a little early, but I have no problem talking to Ricchetti or Klain and telling them that he should get a briefing, because I don't want him to be embarrassed at a press conference or something. And he said, no, I don't know anything about that. I think he should at least have the ability of saying, I've been briefed on the subject and I have no opinion, or whatever he wants to say. But yes, I think that the topic of UFOs is not going away. It's becoming more pronounced for a lot of different reasons. So he can't ignore the subject, even if he wanted to.
This wave of media coverage, we've been part of it, but there's stories everywhere on the subject matter, on major news organizations who would never give it the time of day for a long time. Do you have pride in how it's developed because of the key role that you played in this happening?
I don't like to be proud of things. That sounds arrogant, but I have no doubt that one of the things that I feel comfortable with and glad I worked on is this UFO thing. It was something that had been ignored, and my staff told me to stay the hell away from this. It's not going to do you any good. But it was something that, to me, that stirred my curiosity, and I have so much enjoyed learning more about something that people really care about. And I have to say that as a result of the money that I got with the help of Senator Stevens and Inouye, some $22 million of federal money, we were able to prove that not a dozen people had seen these UFOs, not 100, but thousands. So yes, I feel good that I laid that out, so it cannot be ignored anymore.
You know what I worry about? There's so much news on this. I mean, there was a news conference this week with Lou Elizondo, New York Times, Washington Post, NBC News. They're all there. There are stories everywhere. I worry about UFO overkill, whether it's too much and people get sick of reading about it. Are you able to keep up with it all?
I don't know if I keep up with it all, but I keep up with it. I think that Lou has done an excellent job. In spite of all the naysayers who say he never worked for the government, and he's just a total phony, Lou has always kept his cool, and I think has added a great deal to the conversation.
I learned that you have written sort of an op-ed piece for the New York Times. I don't know if we can talk about it now or when it's going to be out, but what did you want to say? What did you want to say in the New York Times?
Well, I've said it already. They have it. It's up to them when they're going to run it. Basically, what I've done is indicated that I've been involved in this. I told them how I got involved in it, and that it's something that can't be ignored. And I'm happy that we're making progress. The federal government no longer, including people at the Pentagon, no longer criticize or harass or stop promotions of people who report these occurrences. In fact, they have done just the opposite in recent months. They now tell their pilots, those in the sea, to report these unusual circumstances. And I appreciated the honesty of the Pentagon, because when asked what were these things, they say, we don't know, rather than try to say they were balloons from some kind of a weather experiment. They said, we don't know. And that's honest. That's being honest.
After I've covered this for 30 years, I am astonished by the change in the attitude of the media and Congress about the legitimacy of this issue. The UAP Task Force was created by Congress last year. They're due to present a report to Congress by June. Give me your take on that, because it seems to me that that is your baby. Whether you want to take credit for it or not, it's a direct outgrowth of your programs. I
don't see how we can lose anything by this report. I hope it's substantial. I hope they don't run from the subject. But, you know, we have Senator Warner from Virginia, a very conservative Democrat, who is speaking out on this. We have Marco Rubio from Florida, who, by the way, was raised in Las Vegas, who is speaking out on this issue. So I think that the conversation is good. And the other thing that I think is important is that we now have better equipment. Pilots from the airplanes with their cell phones taking some dramatic pictures.
The idea that Marco Rubio and Mark Warner on the Intelligence Committee could agree enough to authorize this task force is sort of astonishing in itself, in that the Republicans and Democrats can agree on anything. Agree?
Yeah, Washington is not, many times we look at Washington and think it's a tribal society. And so to have Rubio and Warner working together on this is really remarkable. I'm proud of both of them.
You know Warner well. I mean, you worked with him for a long time. I don't know if this is a private matter, but are you able to call him and talk to him about the issue?
Yes, I have the opportunity to do that, and I'm going to talk to him not until next week, though.
You know, the idea of a UAP task force sounds like an interim project. They've ran into some roadblocks from agencies that don't want to give up the information. You ran into that yourself when you tried to turn ATIP into a special access program.
You know, you would have to be a contortionist to be able to withstand all of the different obstacles they place in your path. it's remarkable that they are preventing the American public from knowing more.
What do you suppose the reason is? Is it a multitude of reasons why they would still resist coughing up the keepers of the secrets, why they'd still want to keep them secret?
I think it's, you have to understand in government, if it hasn't been done before, we're not going to do it. And I think that's the biggest problem right there. That it's been a subject that is tabooed. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's a topic that people don't want to talk about. And government does their best to keep the public from being advised as to what's going on. And I think that's improper.
I found a video clip from November 1989 where a brown-haired George Knapp is talking to a young Harry Reid about UFOs in a live interview. You were already way out in front on that, but could you imagine all these years later where it would lead and how much change would take place regarding this topic?
George, I blame you totally for all the time I've had to spend on the subject, but it is because of you that I first was directed to look into this. And I can still remember the meeting. I walked into a big conference room and there were lots of academics and interested people and a few oddballs, but it was stimulating to me, and the subject is still very, very interesting to me. I think that it's a subject that if a person's curious, you need to look into it. You know, there are books written now about the subject. I read the one by, what's next the name of it?
Avi Loeb, the Harvard astronomer. Yeah.
He's a astrophysicist from Harvard, and it's an interesting book. He bases that whole book on one message that he believes came from outer space. Very, very interesting. And there are others that are done good work on this. Leslie Keene of the New York Times has done remarkably good work on this and other subjects. So it's an area that is of interest to the American public. And, you know, it's you can be someone who is kind of a person who thinks some kind of a interworld conspiracies taking place, or you can listen to the people who are trying to do everything they can about science. Whichever field you're in, more power to you. I think it's good. I'm glad to read both and listen to both views.
Of course, we've been able to do some stories and share with the public some really interesting images. It seems like the visitors, the people flying this technology, have picked up the pace. They've made very dramatic demonstrations that says, hey, look at us, we're here. 3 photos.
How do you like the pyramids floating around?
Well, I want to ask you, what did you think about that?
They go right into the ocean and there's nothing there.
What did you think when you saw that flying pyramid video the first time?
I just thought to myself, oh, this is something new.
Yeah, I mean, it almost looks preposterous, and then how outrageous. It's certainly not aerodynamic, that design.
And they go right into the ocean.
Let's say the science comes up with pieces of material that's not from here, or a craft, or a being, or something irrefutable that demonstrates that this is somebody else. It's from somewhere else. How do you think the American public will react? Can we handle it?
I don't know how the public will react, but I think as long as we understand that we need to make sure that we are scientifically driven, that we're going to be okay. And if it's coming from places we don't understand, that's still okay, as long as we understand that there is stuff coming from other places. I have no problem whatsoever with that.
You know, we've seen these reports and documents that we've obtained and photos and information from the Navy about these drones that they call them drones as sort of a generic term, buzzing their ships, and they don't know where they came from. They can't track them.
They're coming in swarms like bees, like insects. So many of them.
I mean, we have to assume, and we have to at least keep our minds open to where they're from. The idea that China has made advances in their drone technology, I don't know if it's scarier that it's an unknown or if it's scarier that our adversaries have made great strides in technology.
And always remember, Russia, the former Soviet Union, is run by a man who ran the KGB. They had as many as 30,000 agents at one time, KGB agents. So Russia's involved in this, no question about it.
The UAP Task Force is going to give its report to Congress and maybe do a follow-up report, but that a lot of people think that's not enough. Do you feel that there should be support for a more permanent study of this, some kind of an organization like what you started a long time ago that has an ongoing responsibility for figuring this out?
Yes, the federal government spends trillions of dollars every year. And I believe that there should be an ongoing entity within the Pentagon would be the best place for it, whose sole job is to stay on top of the issue of UFOs.
A long time ago, when we had a conversation after that New York Times story came out, you were sort of surprised by your phone ringing off the hook with calls from your colleagues who were unaware that this had gone on and were really interested. Now it's expanded further. The media is covering it. Congress is willing to investigate. The military is cooperating. I know that you were not entirely comfortable with the idea in the beginning that this would be part of your legacy, but it is. It is part of your legacy.
Georgia, I believe that one of the entities that we don't give enough credit in general is the press. The press is the reason that we are where we are in regard to UFOs, the press. When I got that call from Helene Cooper at the New York Times, I told her that if you want to talk about little green men, I'm not going to talk to you. But if you want to talk about science, I will talk to you. That was the beginning of learning more about the subject. The press, we don't give the press credit for much of what takes place in our country. The press is, Donald Trump and others have called it, fake news and all that kind of stuff. But we as American society are so much better off because the strength of the press in America today. And anything that goes in hurting the press is something that is not good for our country. During the time I was in politics, I had the hell kicked out of me lots of times by the press, but I never, ever, ever denigrated the press, because I do believe that America is as good a country as it is because of freedom of the press.
You have said many times that, look, I want to separate this investigation from the idea of little green men, because you have to keep it straight and narrow. You can't assume that these are aliens from another dimension or from other planets. But the fact is that we don't know yet. And the idea of little green men is something that you're at least open to down the road.
I'm open to anything that is enlightening to the American people. I think that if you are fixed in saying that there's nothing, none of this that Loeb writes about coming from someplace else is valid, you're making a mistake, because you better just say, let's wait and see. And that's what I'm doing. I'm waiting and looking and seeing, and I'm not cutting anything off.
Well, Senator, I'd like to say thank you from the whole world for your work in kicking this off and all the changes that have been wrought since you initiated that first program and study. I mean, this is your baby, whether you like it or not.
Well, as I said, my staff press told me, stay the hell away from it. But it didn't hurt me. I can, here in Vegas, I'll go into an elevator, or someone will see me, are you Harry Reid? Yes. Thank you very much. And they'll usually say, for your work on flying saucers. So people are aware that we've been doing things on the subject of interest to the American people. I'm going to continue doing that. And I'm not going to be repressed by people saying, why the hell wouldn't you spend your time on something important? I think this is important.
Last question. What if it's never resolved? What if we never get an answer to it? We still have to try, I guess. But I mean, this mystery.
George, never is a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't accept that.
Senator Reid, always great to talk to you. Glad you're feeling well.
I think